So how do you come up with like the questions that the hiring manager should be, putting together?
Sure. So I think this one kind of flips this series a little bit on its head, right? It's sort of making what can the employer do to make it better for the candidate, right? But this is like, if your organization really values diversity and inclusion as a core skill set that a candidate needs to have, I think it's really important to address that during the interview process, right? That should be part of the skill set that you want your candidates to come with, or at the very least you expect them to learn once they get there, right? So there's some great content that my friends over at, it was the Corporate Executive Board, but now Gartner, developed around just, I don't know, about a dozen questions around a candidate's values, around their knowledge, around their sort of skills and experience of inclusion and of inclusion competencies and leading inclusively or being an inclusive team member that you can ask of your candidates, during the interview process to see if they meet your organization's kind of threshold for the skills, experiences, and knowledge that someone walking into, junior, middle, or senior role should have. Because I think at this point we're getting to a point where that should be table stakes, right? For any good leader, especially any good leader or manager within an organization, that you have some base knowledge and skill as it relates to inclusion. And if you don't, should you be questioning if that's the right person for the job?
Right.
Asking them, like, what have they done personally to improve their knowledge of diversity? How would they define diversity, right? Is it very myopic, like gender and race? Or do they take a more sort of expansive view and talk about veterans and the LGBTQ plus community, faith, people from other, people's English speakers or people that didn't speak English as a second language, if you're here in the US, all of those socioeconomic background, all of those different factors that can play into kind of what makes us all unique and special.
So let's go back to that a little bit, because
Sure.
you kind of touched on it, but I don't know if I wasn't like, all right, so we want to ask the right questions. We have a candidate that we think is the right fit.
Absolutely.
Right? Now we're looking at, well, do they fit with our culture in regards to DEI?
Yes, and is this a person that has the skills and experiences as it relates to D&I to be effective here? Like, to me, let's kind of flip this on its head. If I go on a company's website and I'm looking for a role and it's saying, oh, here's all of this information about diversity, and here's all, we put out all this data and information because they're trying to sell candidates on what they do, and yet I go into an interview and not a single person asks me about my skills or experience as it relates to diversity and inclusion. To me, that's like,
Right.
like, is that all show, or are they really walking the talk internally? Right? So,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
what was meant for these questions is for that hiring manager, for that interviewer to kind of interrogate, that's a strong word, but probe a candidate's skills and experience for the role and for joining that company. And as I said, I think especially if you're leading a team, so if you're a manager or a director or vice president, that should be just an expectation. It shouldn't be something that's optional. Like, how to use a specific technology tool, or run a sales cycle, or how to develop software. That should be a core competency that everyone coming into those roles should have.
So are there stock questions? Like, do you have like a couple of favorites that you like to use?
So as I said, like, I didn't develop these. These were from Gartner and CEB, but you could ask, how can a lack of diversity inclusion impact a business, right? And inquire there. That's more sort of just base knowledge. Or from a values, tell me about a time when you worked on a team where those diverse backgrounds contributed positively to the outcome of what you were working on. asking them what efforts they've made to be involved, right? How are they personally committed to diversity inclusion, either personally or in their previous organizations, and maybe from a bias standpoint, ask them about a time they've seen bias at play in the workplace, and then how did they respond to that. Just to if you're doing that very sort of behavioral sort of interview, just to see how they've acted and performed in the past.
Now, when do you incorporate these? So, because you've already, now this is the first interview. This is like.
I don't know that that's the first. I don't know that that's first interview, because I would say if you have an interview panel and you're doing 3, 4. I mean, some people do a lot more. I would say at least 1 or 2 of those interviews should at least touch on that subject, right? So it doesn't need to be when the recruiter talks to them, there, but I would say well before you're making your final down select, that it's like, okay, we've talked to half a dozen people, we're down selecting these 2. Like that to me should be something you're aware of, that candidate's capabilities and as it relates to diversity and inclusion.